Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Blue Gators, and today we're going to be talking about why the future is set in stone, what is compatibilism, which is sort of the same thing. There's a difference, you'll see. And thirdly, why I don't believe AoE. So this is going to be a great video, and it's going to appeal to all audiences. So what is compatibilism? Well, compatibilism is a philosophical principle, but we don't need to talk about that right now. In the context of AOT, compatibilism is simply what Aaron says from 130. Even if this is all set in stone from the start, even if this is all what I ever wanted, everything is still ahead. And you can go a little further by looking at Kuma no Ko, which is the 7th ending of Attack on Titan, where it says, "Don't limit the fate you're born, because we were all free." So, the compatibilism principle is there's a fixed timeline that cannot be changed, yet free will exists. And so we will be talking about that principle today. In AOT, there is only one timeline. One. And it's fixed. It cannot be changed. Nothing can be changed. Nothing. Okay. Now, why do I say that? I say that because actually, it's just a logical principle. It's a logical principle based on compatibilism. Now, as I said, it's true. The future is set in stone. But as I say, it's the characters themselves who inscribe it. So yes, actually, free will exists. I hear a lot of people saying, well, Beluga, he says the future is set in stone, so how could there be free will? Well, it's simple. It's set in stone, but the characters inscribe it. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, I'm going to use a bunch of analogies in this video. I'm going to use these analogies to really explore every angle and every personality type, upbringing, to try to really hammer this point home. And maybe the combination of analogies will sort of be like, yes, I get it now. So let's go with the first one. Memento. Teddy, his death is set in stone, as we all know, when he writes, and when I forgot the guy's name, the main character, when he writes the license plate. Since we know the environment he's in, the tattoos, and we know his nature, likes to solve puzzles, is good at puzzles, puts things together. We know that when he writes on the license plate, Teddy's fate is already sealed. It'd be foolish for someone to say Teddy died when the protagonist shot him. His death was caused way back when he wrote on the license plate because it set off a series of events that, due to both of the characters' natures and environments, would only lead to Teddy's death. Okay. Now, even though the future is set in stone, does that mean that the protagonist lacks free will? Of course not. The entire reason why he's set in stone is because of his free will. His free will is the cause of all of this. Now, let's move on to another analogy. This would be a more popular film. Now, if you haven't seen Memento, you've probably seen Endgame. If you haven't seen Memento, you should go watch Memento. But in Endgame, Doctor Strange says there's, whatever outcomes to the coming conflict.
Be back, Jeremy.
Hey, what was that?
Went forward in time to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict.
How many did you see?
14,605,000.
Right? However, I question that. But let's examine this. I'm not going to get into the whole thing. But I'm not a big Marvel fan, so I'm not going to know exactly what to say here. However, I do have one scene. When Quill, Star-Lord, when he blows up and when he ruins the whole plan, right? That was set in stone from the beginning. Because of what happened with Gamora and the character's nature and Quill's nature, that was guaranteed to happen 10 out of 10 times. Now, extrapolating this principle, every character in the battle with Thanos is going to act inside of their character, and by doing that, you start to whittle down the possible actions, because no character is going to act. For example, I'm not a big Marvel fan, that's why I can't bring up examples, but I'm sure if you're a Marvel fan, you can think of for every single character an action that would be totally wildly out of character that they would never do, and so that whittles down the possible actions, which whittles down the possible outcomes. Right? Just because Star-Lord literally can keep his cool does not mean that he will. And he won't. And just because Captain America can do X next thing or Iron Man can do X next thing doesn't mean that they will. Which is why, even though there's technically a bunch of possible outcomes, that doesn't mean that that's actually going to happen. Just because they literally can do it doesn't mean that they will do it. For example, Zeke could just stop the declaration of war and go marry Peak. However, he won't, and he never will. And there's no timeline where he ever will do that. So that whittles down the actions. Now, if you take an extreme example like that, and they make it smaller and smaller and smaller, you could do this. You could whittle it down to there's only one possible course of action. Now, you might be saying, well, how do you know it's only one possible course of action? Maybe they won't act completely out of character, but maybe they will do multiple things. I don't believe that. Here's why. I'll make this analogy. You'll be faulty. I'll explain later. I'm gonna use a sports analogy. I know a lot of nerds don't watch football. Okay, so I'm gonna make this very, very simple. In football, there's a play called a kneeling play. When the game there's a little bit of time within the clock, and the team is ahead, what they'll do, they'll take the ball and they'll just kneel on the ground and run out the clock. The game is over. And they do that to avoid risk, because if they do anything else, it could be risky. They could lose the game, so they just kneel the ball and the game is over. Now there comes a sequence of events, and every football fan knows this. There comes a sequence of events to where after that sequence is over, the game is over. The game is done. The team's fate is sealed, and the future is set in stone. Now, why is it set in stone? Well, very simple. The environment. 1st and 10, 40 seconds left, no timeouts. You're going to kneel the ball. The game is over. They know that because they know the character. They know the coach's nature, and they know the environment. So using those two things, the future is set in stone. There's only one possible course of action. And that action is going to be to kneel the ball. And that is set in stone. See, people who don't watch football, they say, oh, the game was over on that last play. People who do watch football say, oh, the game is over here. Right? I'm not going to explain, it's going to be too long. But actually, really, if you were to take into consideration every single factor, the coach's emotions, what the coach watched in film, the coach's thought process, the other coach's nature leads to the environment, just like every other person's nature leads to the environment that they're in. If you were to go backwards, the game was actually over before it started. So, now we would be saying, well, Beluga, what if someone sees a future he doesn't like and then decides to change it? That is a good point. However, remember what I said earlier. If the future is set in stone, it's the characters who inscribe it. Which means that if someone sees the future, it's the future that they wanted. I'm going to give you actually 3 examples of characters seeing the future in Attack on Titan and them not changing course at all. Number 1, when Grisha gave Eren the Attack Titan, he, using his future, the future memories of the rumbling, decided not to give Eren the Attack Titan in that moment. But then he did it anyway when the time came. Eren, in 131, was not going to save Ramsey based on his future memories, but decided to do it anyway. And most shockingly, Eren, seeing Sasha dying, decided to kill her anyway. People get triggered, never mind. Maybe it's rephrased. Maybe I should say, decided to put her in harm's way, cause her to be killed. Whatever. Even though he wanted to prevent her death, he didn't. Not because the future is set in stone by some magical fairy or by some weird pigeonholing principle. No, it's set in stone because Eren wanted it to happen. At every infraction point, as Joe Biden would say, or at every decision-making point, he would always choose the decision that would lead to Sasha's death. He wanted it to happen. And so, this is how the future is set in stone. So he saw the future of Sasha dying. And so, that's why he saw it. He saw the future out of context. That's what's actually happening here. When someone actually sees a future they don't like in a Compatiblist universe, they're actually seeing an out of context future. Because again, it's what they want. If they were to see the context, they would agree with it because They're the ones who made the decisions to make it happen in the first place because they wanted to make those decisions. For example, quick example, let's say I woke up one day and I got a future memory and I'm $500 in debt. Now, I'd be upset about that, obviously. But since I see the future, that means that's going to happen. So I could try to to prevent it. Just like, oh, I save my money and penny pinch and work extra hours, yada, yada, yada. But the reality of the situation is that I'm still going to be in debt. Why? Well, let's say Isayama comes to Maine. And he's doing another desk signing for charity again. And I am there. So I go drive to the event and I buy his desk for $2,000. Well, guess what? Now I'm $500 in debt. I could have avoided it. I could have. I could have easily not bought the desk. But my nature is such that I would buy the desk, and my environment, the fact that he's in Maine, made it possible. So the combination of my nature and the environment made it so that it was going to happen that I was going to buy the desk, even though I didn't want to, my future memory. So anytime someone says a memory that they don't like, that is simply a memory out of context, and they will make decisions willingly and knowingly that lead to that same outcome. So, that's why I can't believe AoE. Because AoE, in order for that to work, there would have to be a different Aaron. A different Aaron. If the manga Aaron and anime Aaron are the same person, then AoE cannot happen because Aaron will make the same decisions no matter what memory he gets. Assuming he gets a memory of an event that he may or may not find undesirable, I'm going to keep this spoiler free. Assuming he gets that memory, he will make the same decision because he wants to. At every point where he could change his decision, he's going to make the decision to act in a way that will lead to what we got in the manga. Even if he didn't like it at first when he saw it. And that is why I can't believe AoE. People ask me all the time, why should we do AoE? And I can bring up a bunch of reasons, a ton of reasons, but I always go with that one. It's simply impossible. Every single person, Mikasa, Aaron, John, Connie, Reiner, Berthel, Annie, everyone would have to be a completely different person in order for this not to work. That is the only way. The only way to change the future is for either the environment to be different or the persons to be different. The environment's the same. The environment's the exact same. So unless you're trying to tell me that Aaron or Mikasa or Jean is a different person, then the story will end exactly as it is in the manga. Again, I'm going to stress this again. I know I'm repeating myself a lot. I just want to be extremely clear. Even if Aaron sees something that he doesn't like, he will make the same decisions because, as we've gone through beforehand, that's why I did the groundwork in the beginning. Because if he saw it in the future, that means he wanted it to happen. So, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Join the subreddit. Make sure to join the subreddit. Link will be in the description. And I'll see you in my next video.